Marijuana could finally become legal in New York next year, and the chances of that happening are higher than ever. Not only is the state strapped for cash, but most states bordering New York have now either legalized the drug or are headed in that direction. Both Vermont and Massachusetts already have legal weed, and New Jersey is set to create its own program in the coming months. That's left New York behind on the issue.
And right now, all we're doing is pushing New Yorkers across state borders to Massachusetts, up where you live, to New Jersey very soon, down where I live, to other surrounding states, where they spend their money in other states to buy the products that we could be producing and selling right here in New York.
State Senator Liz Krueger is one of several Democrats who've led the charge for legalizing marijuana in New York in recent years. And she's part of a growing number of lawmakers who think there could be movement on the issue in 2021. But that's easier said than done. The state will have to set up an entire regulatory and tax structure, and that's left Democrats divided on how to move forward. For one, lawmakers don't want to create a system that still drives people to buy the drug illegally.
And then there's the fundamental question of how much are we going to tax these products? And I fall into the category of people who say, don't get greedy. We need to make sure we have a successful set of programs. And that means we need to make sure we are not pricing the legal safe products at a higher cost than the existing illegal unknown products, because then people won't move.
And for that, New York actually finds itself at an advantage on marijuana. More than a dozen states have already legalized the drug for adult use, and that's given New York plenty of time to see what's worked and what hasn't. State Senator Diane Savino is another Democrat involved in discussions on legalization.
We don't need to make the same mistakes that other states have made. And they have made a lot of mistakes, and we should be very careful as we move forward.
But Democrats who control the state legislature are still divided on how exactly to legalize marijuana. A top issue is what the state should do with the tax revenue from the marijuana industry, which is expected to be about $300 million each year. Some Democrats want part of those funds to be reinvested in communities of color, where the state's drug laws have been enforced at higher rates.
The people that I have been working with and are committed to this model feel very strongly that revenue should be used for social justice purposes to support undoing damage done, again, in poor communities of color.
But others want to be more flexible with the money. Governor Andrew Cuomo wants it to be available for however the state needs it at the time, rather than being earmarked for a specific purpose. And he says the financial incentive for that strategy is greater this year. New York is facing a budget deficit north of $10 billion because of the coronavirus.
I think this year it is ripe because the state is going to be desperate for funding, even with Biden, even with the stimulus.
But there's a few problems with that. For one, tax revenue from legalizing marijuana is only expected to be about $300 million each year. That's a drop in the bucket compared to the state's budget gap. And second, budget analysts say it'll be years before the marijuana industry actually generates that much revenue.
In the short term, it's not likely to provide immediate relief, first of all, because of timing. Second, because of the magnitude. If you have the $8 billion gap this year, and at most, that's going to be $200-300 million 4 years from now for marijuana.
So supporters of legalization are hoping to drive the conversation away from money and toward what they see as the other benefits of legalizing marijuana. Chris Alexander does government relations for a cannabis company on the West Coast that's hoping to set up shop in New York. He says lawmakers should consider if the state's drug laws are doing more harm than good, especially for people of color.
One thing that was very clear over the years of enforcement of different administrations is that prohibition has consistently been selectively enforced, right? And it's been selectively enforced in communities of color. It's been selectively enforced around young people. And so I think really it's more so that prohibition doesn't work. It hasn't worked, which is why you're seeing so many states make the decision to go the other direction.
New York already decriminalized small amounts of marijuana a few years ago. Holding less than 2 ounces of the drug is no longer a crime, but you will receive a fine. And some don't want to see New York go any further, saying full-out legalization of marijuana could bring huge companies into the state to exploit exploit the market. Dr. Kevin Sabet is a former drug policy advisor under President Barack Obama.
This is commercialized by an industry not very different than like big tobacco and big alcohol, which are definitely industries certainly Democrats are not big fans of, and because they've seen how they've run roughshod over public health, and marijuana wouldn't be any different.
That's actually something that supporters of legalization want to avoid as well, hopefully through oversight by the state. Krueger says they want to create a system that favors competition and innovation rather than corporate control.
We want to invest in entrepreneurs in these communities to be able to start up businesses related to cannabis. We want to provide technical assistance. We want to make sure this does not become a big pharma model with 3 or 4 companies controlling all of this in the state of New York.
But it's worth noting that the marijuana industry is already operating in New York, just in a different way. Medical marijuana has been legal here for the last 5 years, with 10 companies now licensed to sell in New York. But the state's medical marijuana program hasn't really grown in that time. And leaders from the industry are hoping that changes as the state considers full legalization. Stephen Dahmer is the chief medical officer of Vireo, New York, a medical marijuana company based outside the capital region.
We're ready to serve more. We're starting to see research come together to support the use of medical cannabis, especially in chronic pain for those patients on opioids. We have a quality tested product which has proven the test of time, and we're excited for the program to expand, at a minimum to include additional qualifying conditions.
Right now, New York's medical marijuana program is considered one of the most restrictive in the country. The list of conditions that qualify someone for medical marijuana is shorter than other states, and only certain doctors are allowed to prescribe the drug. Nigist Abebe is Director of Public Policy for Columbia Care, a medical marijuana company, and president of the New York Medical Cannabis Association.
So the New York Medical Cannabis Program is definitely one of the more restrictive ones in the country. It has a very short conditions list, which limits patient access and takes away doctor discretion, because we know that the research is evolving a lot faster than regulations can keep up with.
Broadly speaking, medical marijuana companies want the state to allow more people to use the drug and make it easier to get. And that's something that's supported as well by Senator Savino, who was a key architect of the state's medical marijuana program 5 years ago. She's now trying to expand it with legislation that would allow more dispensaries and give doctors more discretion to prescribe marijuana when they think it's the right choice for their patient, regardless of condition.
If a doctor, in his or her estimation, believes that a patient could be benefited by the use of any particular drug that is legal in the state of New York to treat whatever that condition is, we shouldn't get in their way. We should allow them to make that determination for their patient. So that's what we're recommending.
Lawmakers could pass an expansion to the state's medical marijuana program without legalizing the drug for recreational use, but it's more likely that they'll do both at once, expanding the medical program while creating a system for adult use. That's where the state's medical marijuana companies come in. Some of them want in on the adult use market as well and say they're ready to help jumpstart the new industry. Here's Abebe again.
We also know that the future size of the New York market is going to be significant. And we believe that including the medical operators will help start this program off on the strongest possible foot in order to fund that future expansion.
For that to happen, New York will have to decide if medical companies will be allowed into the recreational industry. That's still up in the air. And that leads to other questions about legalizing cannabis. Like, what if some communities just don't want marijuana companies to set up shop where they live? Krueger says she'd be fine with allowing communities to ban marijuana retailers if that moves the needle on legalization.
So it is true that there are certain populations that are more concerned about it, and they want the right to not have retailers in their communities, the right not to have stores. I think that's fine.
And there are other issues with marijuana legalization that still have to be ironed out as well. Like, will New York allow people to grow the drug at home? And how many companies will be allowed to operate in the state? And then there's the issue of road safety. There's currently no easy way to test if someone's driving under the influence of marijuana. Opponents of legalization say that's a problem.
but we're going to have to invest a lot more in the driving issue and impairment. We're going to have to invest a lot more in labs and toxicology. It's going to cost money, and I don't know if they're going to be willing to do that, and that's why I worry about doing it in the first place.
Those are all questions that Democrats will have to figure out in the next few months if they want to legalize marijuana next year. But with more states around the country now moving toward legalization, lawmakers like Savino see this as New York's moment.
Question is, we're surrounded by states that are going to have legal marijuana programs. Does New York want to be in the game or not?